Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Finally, Robyn destroyed Kody's beautiful life and threw him into hell, family over, and when you look back at the journey that began with a hopeful dream of plural unity, of love stretched across 4 wives and a growing cluster of children, of a man who proudly claimed his life was built on the principle of togetherness and spiritual calling, the story now feels like a tragic cautionary tale of ambition, jealousy, favoritism, and one woman's influence that many fans argue reshaped the entire Brown family dynamic beyond recognition, for Kody once stood tall in the eyes of his wives and community as the patriarch of a rare family experiment shown on national television, where his charisma, confidence, and vision of one home under God drew Mary, Janelle, and Christine into a life that was not easy but at least was shared. Yet with the arrival of Robyn, first as a sweet single mother searching for a place to belong, then as a legal wife elevated above the rest by the paperwork Kody signed when he divorced Mary to marry her, the fragile balance cracked, and it is in this crack that the seeds of destruction were planted, because what looked like inclusion at first soon revealed itself as exclusion, with Robyn's needs, Robyn's children, and Robyn's insecurities becoming the centerpiece of Kody's attention, and while Kody believed he was doing right by protecting her, by shielding her from the resentment of the other wives, by showing the world he was a devoted husband, he was in fact alienating the foundation that had carried him for decades, since Mary had been his first love and companion who brought him into plural marriage, Janelle the practical partner who helped him build finances and stability, and Christine the nurturing mother who raised their children with relentless dedication, yet all 3 began to feel the sting of being marginalized, and as the seasons of sister wives unfolded, viewers could see the warmth leave their eyes, the frustration grow in their voices, the way their once tolerant spirits turned into cold detachment, and even though Robyn insisted she never wanted to be the favorite, never wanted to be the wedge, her very presence, her tears, her constant reminders of being misunderstood, her sobbing Robyn moments where she told Kody she was unfairly treated, worked like a trap, pulling Kody deeper into her orbit until he could no longer see clearly, until every conflict with Mary, every disagreement with Janelle, every fight with Christine was filtered through the lens of how does this affect Robyn, and the family that once stood as a fortress of unconventional faith began to crumble from within, because favoritism is poison and polygamy, and when the patriarch makes one wife the queen while the others are left in the shadows, resentment is inevitable, and so Kody's beautiful life, the life he bragged about for years, the life built on the idea that love multiplies rather than divides, became the exact opposite. Shrinking down until all he had left was Robyn and her children, while the rest of his wives walked away, first emotionally, then physically, Christine leading the exodus when she declared she could no longer be married to a man who denied her intimacy and treated her as expendable, Janelle following when she realized her independence and her children mattered more than clinging to a broken marriage, and Mary, despite holding on the longest, finally admitting that her spiritual marriage to Kody had been dead for years. And in the ashes of those exits stands Kody, not a proud husband of 4, but a man stripped of his empire, living in the ruins of a dream, bound only to Robyn, who, instead of lifting him higher, has become the symbol of everything lost, for his children are estranged, his reputation is battered, his finances are stretched thin after Coyote Pass turned into a nightmare rather than a promised land, and even fans who once sympathized now look at him with pity or anger, saying that Robyn destroyed him, not because she swung a sword, but because she wrapped him so tightly in her embrace that he suffocated everyone else, and now, when the cameras pan across his weary face, viewers see not the confident patriarch but a man in hell, trapped in a marriage where his only partner is the one most blamed for the family's collapse, and the irony is cruel, because the more he defends her, the more he isolates himself, and the more isolated he becomes, the more it feels like Robyn's plan all along, whether intentional or not, has been fulfilled, for the plural family is over, the dream is shattered, and the man who once boasted of abundance now finds himself with scarcity, of love, of trust, of companionship, of respect, and in this final act of the Brown family saga, the verdict feels inescapable. Robyn destroyed Kody's beautiful life and threw him into hell, and the family is over forever. Kody Brown's life, a self-woven masterpiece of patriarchal control, performative spirituality, and sprawling familial ambition, did not simply fray at the edges. It was Robyn who, with the quiet, devastating precision of a master restorer who finally decides to burn the painting, located the single, load-bearing thread and pulled. To claim she destroyed his beautiful life is to mistake the final, collapsing act for the entire play. Robyn did not arrive as a wrecking ball, she arrived as the perfect, bespoke key, crafted to fit every loose and rusty lock in Kody's ego, and in turning that key, she systematically dismantled the foundation of the plural family he claimed to cherish, not through overt malice, but through the insidious alchemy of validation, victimhood, and voracious emotional consumption. She didn't throw him into hell, she lovingly guided him there, assuring him all the way that it was heaven, and by the time he realized the landscape was eternal fire and the chorus of weeping was the voices of his discarded children, the door had slammed shut behind him, and the word family was not a declaration but an epitaph, over. Kody's beautiful life was always a carefully curated illusion, a house of cards built on the strained backs and silenced frustrations of his first 3 wives. Mary, Janelle, and Christine were the pillars, managing the logistics, the finances, the childbirth, and the emotional labor of raising a small nation of children, all while competing for scraps of attention from a husband whose affection was transactional and whose attention was a finite resource to be won. Their dynamic was messy, often dysfunctional, but it was a functional dysfunction, a system with its own rules, language, and hard-won equilibrium. Into this walked Robyn, not as a 4th equal pillar, but as an architect from a different firm, one who understood that her client was not the family, but the man at its head. She mastered the vocabulary of plural marriage not to live it, but to weaponize it. She spoke of the principle with reverence, but her practice of it was exclusivity. She demanded a courtship that broke previously established rules, required a luxury rental while other wives pinched pennies, and inserted herself and her children as the central narrative of the Brown family saga, a story where she was perpetually the damsel in distress and Kody the lone knight. Her destruction was not explosive, it was erosive. It was in the constant, whispered calibrations of Kody's reality. Where the other wives offered challenges or practical concerns, Robyn offered unwavering, sycophantic agreement. She reflected back to him not the flawed, often foolish man he was, but the persecuted, visionary patriarch he believed himself to be. She became his emotional safe haven, but a haven built on the quarantine of all other relationships. By agreeing that his struggles with his other wives were entirely their fault, that their reasonable requests for time or resources were attacks on him, she pathologized healthy conflict and sanctified his resentment. She became the curator of his grievances, meticulously collecting every slight and storing them as evidence of the world's injustice against them. The other wives weren't just difficult, they were threats to his spiritual journey, obstacles to his happiness. In this mirrored chamber of her making, Kody's ego grew monstrous, fed only on the nectar of her validation and the poison of his own amplified victimhood. The true masterpiece of this destruction was how she isolated him. She didn't need to scream or forbid, she only needed to cry. A well-timed tear, a narrative of her own abandonment and fear, was enough to reroute Kody's priorities, cancel plans, and reposition her as the one who truly needed him. Her home became the headquarters, the safe house, which by its very definition made the other homes dangerous and unstable. The infamous COVID-19 rules were not merely about health, they were the perfect, inarguable bureaucratic tool for formalizing this isolation. Drafted not for the family, but to protect Robyn's kids and Kody's access to them, the rules were a moat dug around her castle, with Robyn as the gatekeeper holding the drawbridge strings. She presented them not as her demands, but as her noble sacrifices for the family, all while knowing full well they were an impossible standard for wives with independent children and lives. It was a brilliant checkmate: comply and concede your individual family units, or disobey and be branded a dangerous rebel. She gave Kody the script to play the responsible leader enforcing order, while she provided the rationale that ensured his leadership served only her kingdom. And so, one by one, the pillars fell. Christine, the heart of the family who had long been starving for a sliver of the intimacy Robyn consumed daily, finally looked at the math of her life and realized the answer was 0. She left, not just leaving a vacancy but tearing a hole in the very mythology of the family. Janelle, the pragmatic brain, who had always seen this structure as a practical financial and spiritual partnership, realized the books had been cooked, the assets were tilted, and the partnership was a lie. She looked at the RV parked on the land that was supposed to be her dream and saw not a future, but a symbol of her misplaced trust in a man now wholly counseled by another wife. Mary, the loyal foundation, had been emotionally ghosted for years, left dangling by a thread of hope spun entirely by Robyn, who played the intermediary, offering false hope and keeping Mary in a state of suspended animation because her presence, however miserable, lent legitimacy to the crumbling facade. When the final collapse came, it was not Robyn who delivered the killing blow, it was Kody himself, armed with the weapons she had given him. His raging, bitter monologues, his petulant declarations that he never loved them, his grotesque admission that he had faked intimacy to be a good polygamist, were the fruits of the poison tree Robyn had planted and tended. He was her creation, a man so utterly divorced from the reality of his own actions and so marinated in a narrative of his own persecution that he could watch his family leave and believe himself to be the one who was abandoned. His beautiful life, the show, the big family, the legacy, lay in smoldering ruins around him.